This is Car Market Watch Ireland, a roundup of some interesting cars for sale in Ireland right now, along with some tips on what to look for if you're considering buying one of them. So let's get started. First up, we've got the Audi A4 B5. This one has got the 1.8 turbo engine, and it's also got quattro all-wheel drive. According to the ad, there is a whole bunch of stamped service history, and it would need it because it's at 202,000 miles. So if it has been maintained well, that might not be an issue. The NCT is up on May 2021. There is no mention of road tax, so you'd have to assume that there is none left, but it's €636 per year on this. All-wheel drive wasn't standard on these A4s, so that would have been a pretty expensive optional extra at the time. It's mated to a 5-speed manual gearbox. These B5s are quite rare now. You don't see them on the roads too often. A lot of them have been scrapped, and in this spec it's even rarer, I would say. It does have 17-inch alloy wheels and Goodyear tyres, so it's somebody who really did like this car. I'm not sure if those 17-inch wheels would have come as standard on this. I think they might have been from the S4 version of this B5, but don't quote me on that. It's got a very nice interior. There's half leather Recaro seats which are fully electric. It's got electric windows all around, a Bose sound system with a 6 CD changer, not that you use that a whole lot. It's got xenon headlights, which is quite impressive for a car of this age. Air conditioning, all of that. Overall, this looks like a really nice car, and it would be a great daily driver. So what should you be looking for if you're actually going to go out and view this car? Well, first up is the timing belt. So check in the history when the timing belt, the tensioner and the water pumps have been last done. At this point they should have been done multiple times. The timing belt is due to be changed every 60 to 70,000 miles on these engines. So we should have had about 3 of them by now if it's sitting at 202,000 miles. The second item is thermostats. They can fail on these engines, so make sure that the engine does come up to temp when you're on the test drive. Watch that temperature gauge, check the HVAC is blowing hot and cold. The next item is front wheel bearings can wear on these. It's not a big issue, but if you're out on the road on a test drive, just listen for a drone that kind of doesn't go away as you put it into neutral or take it out of gear. Not a big deal, but something you'll need to factor into the cost. The last item is the PCV valves can fail. It's not really that expensive of a part, and how you'll know it's gone is, the top of the engine or along the intake manifold is covered in a kind of oily residue. I'll leave you with one final item about this car: insurance. It is now 21 years old. In Ireland, some insurance companies have started loading cars that are over 20 years old, or sometimes not insuring them at all. Some companies have put loads on cars that are even 15 years old and older. So go and check with your insurance company that you can even get this car insured in the first place before you go out and get a test drive. Next up, we have a 2007 Opel Astra OPC. This was recently reduced in price from £5,000 to €3,750, which seems a bit of a bargain, to be honest. These are not the sharpest handling hot hatch, but they were one of the most potent back in their day. They came standard with 240 brake. On this particular one, the NCT is out, but it's booked in for a test in January, so it could be a condition of the sale that it passes the NCT. It's taxed until the end of February, and the annual fee for that will be €710. The mileage is currently sitting at 220,000 kilometers. One of the strange items for this one is that it's had 16 previous owners, so that might sound a bit dodgy, but it's not always the case. A lot of the time what people used to do was to swap the ownership back and forth between their partner, just so they could do some tax dodges and stuff like that in the past. It mightn't have been this owner, so you can ask them about that. Standard spec on these was a 6-speed manual gearbox and heated Recaro seats, which look really, really nice. This particular one has got a full service history, and it looks like it's been really well maintained, or certainly recently. It's had a timing belt and a full service done 3 months ago, a brand new turbo and exhaust manifold fitted, new discs and pads done 20,000 kilometers ago, and almost new tyres as well. This car has got some modifications, so do be aware of that. It says that it's been remapped to around 240 plus. I don't really get that because they were 240 brake as standard, so hopefully there's some sort of receipt to say it was done by a reputable tuner. The headlights have been converted to LEDs. This isn't necessarily a good thing because these came with HIDs as standard, and if those HID lenses are still there with the LEDs now shining through it, it's highly likely that won't pass the NCT, or certainly it's a risk that it will be blinding drivers on the road. The 18-inch wheels appear to have been resprayed in a kind of graphite colour and look pretty tasty. And it's also got a replacement head unit with a Pioneer one with Apple CarPlay. So what do you need to look out for if you're actually interested in buying this car? So number one, excessive smoke coming out of the exhaust. It can mean that either the turbo is on the way out, which the turbo was replaced recently, so not likely, or the valve stem seals are worn. You'll particularly see this on a cold start or at idle. The gearboxes are known to be quite weak on this model, so in first gear and sixth gear seem to be the ones that are most affected, so check that it doesn't pop out of gear as you're driving, particularly in those gears. And also check when the last gearbox oil change was done. The timing belts for these are meant to be done every 130,000 kilometers. This one has been done recently, but just checking the history. But it is advised to do it more regularly than that. The rear arches can rust on these, so check for that. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that remap. Really, you should declare that to your insurance company, but again, it says it's remapped to 240 plus, so maybe just look into that. It might not actually be remapped. Overall, this looks like a bargain, to be honest. There's a load of money has been thrown into this recently to give it some good maintenance. I mean, things like a turbo manifold, timing belt, all that costs serious money. You know, it has been reduced in price, so maybe the seller is looking for a quick sale now. So get out there and test it out. Let us know how you get on. This next one's from a dealer in Ireland. It's a 1985 Honda CRX. This is the Mark 1. You just don't see these ever. Definitely not in Ireland, but even in the UK, they're impossible to find. Ask me how I know. I used to be a CRX owner of a Mark II VTEC SIR, a Japanese import, and I always lusted after the Mark 1s. They're just so simple of a design, and they're just so light. They come in at around 825 kilos, which is just crazy. This is the 1.5 fuel injected engine. They did also come in a 1.6, which would be the one that I'd ideally like, but these type of cars you just can't be picky. It's whatever comes up. The fuel injected engine is a 12 valve 4-cylinder. I don't know exactly, but I think it's around about 110 brake horsepower, which with that kind of weight, I'm sure this thing would be a bundle of fun. It was supplied new in the UK, and it's had just 2 owners, both of them from the same family. So the first owner had it for 20 years, the second one had it for 15 years, and it's been sourced from there. It's only at 50,000 miles. It's pretty crazy. It's demanding a pretty high price, so it's currently priced at 13 grand. But you know, where else are you going to find one? I guess importing from Japan would be the next best alternative, but I'm not sure you'd find one cheaper. Funny enough, although it's got manual steering and manual windy up windows, it's got an electric sunroof, which is interesting. There's a full service history with this car, and the timing belt was changed 500 miles ago. So what should you be looking out for if you're going to go and view this car? Well, it's all about rust. Old Japanese cars love the rust. And although there is a video, which I'll drop in a few sections of after this, showing underneath the car and all around the car, and it looks to be in great condition, you would want to do your research and go over this with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that every corner of it has been examined for rust. Panels for this are not going to be easy to source. Even on the interior, the inside of the doors, around the metal frame. You need to check everywhere for rust. So that'll be your main enemy. Mechanically, they're very strong. You just need to do the timing belts on these engines, which needs to be done every 60,000 miles or every 5 years. So although it's been done 500 miles ago, you know, this type of a car may not have been driven very often. So has that 500 mile ago timing belt been done in the last 5 years? Just check the receipts on that. It probably wouldn't be a very expensive job anyway. Like all Hondas, they like to have crunchy gears sometimes if they're abused. This was lady owned for most of its life, so it's probably okay, but particularly going from first to second, check it hasn't got any crunchy gears and the synchros haven't been messed up. The other item is the wheels. So there's 13-inch wheels on these, which will limit your tyre options going forward because they're harder and harder to come by. But if you were to, say for example, have a buckle in one of the wheels, it's not going to be easy to source a replacement wheel of the same design. So make sure there's no shaking in the wheel or anything might indicate you have a buckle, vibrations on the motorway. So as this is, you know, 35-year-old car, 36-year-old car, you're going to need a classic policy for this. You're never going to get this insured on a regular policy, so just check into that. I'd advise contacting Autoline up in Northern Ireland. They should be able to help you out. I would love this for my own car. I'm meant to be getting rid of a car at the moment, but if I had money in my pocket, I would be sorely tempted to go and test drive this. So this next ad is a bit of a punt because it's very light on details. It's a 2003 Mini Cooper S, the R53 generation. It's got an NCT until February of 2021. There's no mention of tax, so you'd have to assume it's out. The cost for that is €514 per year. It's at 120,000 miles currently. It does look very clean from the photos, and it says that the alloys have been refurbished. It also has a Janspeed exhaust, which appears to be the only modification to it. New discs and pads, new bushes and suspension arms. But other than that, it doesn't mention if there's any other, you know, full service history or anything like that. That's the extent of the information on it. What do you need to look out for one of these Cooper S's? The clutch basically is expensive to replace, not because of the parts, but because of the labour. So check that if you're going to take it on a test drive. Give it a bit of load and listen out for slipping and the revs increasing, but the speed not. The supercharger on these needs to be serviced or rebuilt every 100,000 miles roughly. So just check in the history if there's any evidence of that having been done. Another weak point on these R53s is the electrics. So just check that absolutely everything works, and not just the lights and all that side of things, but you know, the head units, the wipers, the central locking, absolutely everything can be expensive and tricky to fix. So other than that, I can tell you that these cars are a bundle of fun. I had one myself, slightly later generation with a different steering wheel. This is an earlier one, and it's not clear. There's no mention in the ad to say if it has cruise control or not, and I can't really see from the photos, but it does look to be a decent spec. Another thing to watch out for on these is the run flat tyres. So most owners at this point have swapped them out for regular tyres, which ride a lot better. The run flats can be quite harsh on the road. So I can't see, again, there's no mention of it in the ad, and it's not clear in the photos if this is running normal tyres or not, but that can be a nice bonus. These cars have kind of bottomed out price wise. I would say as they get older and older, they're going to start going up in price. So this looks like a real bargain if it's in good condition. The last car I have for you today is a 2008 Seat Leon F4 with the DSG gearbox. Unlike the Golf GTI of the same generation, where a lot of them are 3-door and it's harder to find 5-door ones, all of these Seat Leons were all in 5 doors only. They weren't available as a 3-door. This one has an NCT until January 2021, so the seller has said that it's going to be given a fresh test before it's sold, so that's good for peace of mind. There's no mention of road tax on it, so you'd have to assume it's out, and the cost for that is €710 per year. It's currently at 220,000 kilometers. It's obviously the 2-litre petrol turbo engine with the 200 horsepower, same as the Golf GTI. It's got the DSG gearbox with paddle shifts on the steering wheels. It's had some small improvements, so it's running on the 18-inch Cupra wheels from the uprated model. It's also got drilled and grooved discs, and it's running R8 coil packs, which is interesting. It also says it's got an extensive service history. So what do you need to look out for if you're going to go and view this car? Well, coil packs is one of the common problems on this, and the fact that they've been swapped out is great. But another thing to be watchful for is that early versions of these Leon F4s used a different engine to later ones. So the early engines use a timing belt, which is due a change of the belt and water pump every 60,000 miles, whereas later ones use a chain and it doesn't need to be maintained as often. So I can't see from the photos in this ad which one it has, because there's no photos of the engine bay. But the way you know is the early engines have the dipstick at the front of the engine, and the later engines that use a timing chain have the dipstick on the side of the engine. So just watch out for that. Something else to note for this car is these early F4s have a terrible interior on the inside. I did test drive one of these a few years back with a view to buying, and they just got a really dated interior. So if you can get over that, they're great value. They don't seem to have the same issues with rust in the front arches that the Golf GTI Mark V's do. So if you're not picky about the interior, it could be a great bargain. There's some things that you should always look for when you're buying a second-hand car. This includes head gasket, so looking under the oil cap to check for any kind of mayonnaise residue there that would indicate that the oil and water are mixing. Crash damage, so particularly looking in the chassis, on the chassis legs and the boot floor, a place like that, for any signs of repair or rippling in the bodywork. Suspension wear, so taking it over rough ground if you can, or over speed bumps or somewhere where the suspension could be tested, and you're listening for knocks and rattles and creaks and things like that. A certain amount of it is inevitable on second-hand cars unless it's been refreshed, but you're looking for things that would need immediate replacement and therefore have costs. For rust, so rust is something that it's common to find in the chassis and on suspension parts and things like that, but the bodywork in particular is where rust is an issue. So it can mean an NCT failure or repairs are required. Typical places to look for rust are along the sills and around the wheel arches, but you can also see it on boot doors and places like that. The exhaust, check if it's in good condition. If it is original to the car, there's a high chance that it's going to have some blows here and there, either need repairs or replacements, so factor that in. Tyres, it's a simple one, but depending on the size of the wheels, the cost of the tyres can be quite extensive. So look for uneven wear, which can indicate suspension needs to be either realigned or some of the bushes are worn, or just that the tread depth is low, which would be an NCT failure. And just for safety, you're better off having decent tyres. Electrics, this is an easy one to check. Just run through absolutely everything from the HVAC system to all the lights, headlights, brake lights, electric windows, electric mirrors, folding mirrors, heated rear windscreen, absolutely everything. It can be as simple as just a fuse blown, but a lot of these electrics can be quite expensive if it's more complex than that. I also want to mention some caveats about the cars I've listed in this video. I haven't personally gone to see any of these, so I can't vouch for them myself. I can't guarantee that the information that I've shown from the ads is actually accurate, so buyer beware. If you are considering buying one of these cars and you're not knowledgeable about cars, bring somebody who is, or a mechanic or somebody that can check it out for you. So best of luck with your search, and I hope you bag a good one.